Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into a new kind of cyber threat, one that doesn't just hack into code, it hacks into people. Let's get right to it.
Take a look at these names. In the world of enterprise software, you're looking at some of the biggest players on the entire planet. These are absolute titans, right? Their tech is woven into the daily life of thousands of other companies. And in 2025, they all became targets for a completely new kind of threat.
So here's the thing. We've all heard of powerful hacking groups before, but they've always had rivals. They've always operated in their own little silos. Which raises a brand new and frankly pretty scary question. What happens when the world's most notorious cybercriminals decide to stop working alone? Well, what happens is you get a supergroup. In mid-2025, 3 separate infamous hacking collectives decided to merge their brands, their members, and all their know-how to create something totally new. They gave themselves a name, Scattered Lapsus Hunters, or SLSH for short.
And what this group did next, it sent absolute shockwaves through the cybersecurity world. It wasn't just about how many companies they hit, it was about how they did it. They proved that the human firewall, that's you, me, the person at the desk, is the single greatest vulnerability in corporate history.
So let's start by really understanding who we're dealing with here. This wasn't just another hacking group. No, this was a federation. A whole new model for organized cybercrime. The official date was August 8, 2025. A new channel on the messaging app Telegram goes live, and it announces the formal union of 3 big names, Scattered Spider, Lapsus, and ShinyHunters. This wasn't some random team-up. It was a coordinated merger built for maximum impact.
Now, this is what's so wild. Look at how they structured themselves. It was almost like a corporation with different departments. Scattered Spider were the specialists in getting in the front door, what's called initial access. ShinyHunters, they were the experts at grabbing all the sensitive data and leaking it. And Lapsus, who were already famous for their chaotic, very public style, they were the PR and extortion arm, making sure the whole world knew what happened and turning up the heat on the victims.
But SLSH, the core group, wasn't the whole story. They were operating inside this much larger, much more chaotic ecosystem known as the COM. So think of SLSH as the professional team, and the COM as the sprawling subculture of English-speaking teens and young adults, some as young as 16, all drawn in by the promise of easy money and online fame. They're sharing tools, trading access. It's a total free-for-all.
And this subculture was so dangerous that it got the direct attention of law enforcement. The FBI put out a warning, basically saying that the COM was becoming a gateway into serious cybercrime for a whole new generation. It was a pipeline, feeding fresh talent right into groups like SLSH.
Okay, so how did they actually do it? Well, their playbook was so simple it was almost brilliant, and that's what made it so devastatingly effective. Their whole philosophy could have been log in, not hack in, because they were focused on tricking people, not just breaking code.
At the very heart of their attacks was a piece of tech that most of us use every single day, probably without even thinking about it. OAuth. You know when you sign into a new app using your Google or Facebook account? That's OAuth. It's basically a digital key that grants access without you ever sharing your password. And they figured out how to turn that key into a weapon.
This breaks down their whole method perfectly. It starts with Step 1. An attacker calls an employee, that's vishing, pretending to be from IT support. Step 2. They trick that employee into going to a setup page and authorizing a new app. Step 3 is the big one. That action creates something called an OAuth token, which is a powerful digital key. And the final step? With that token, the attacker now has direct access to export data, and they've completely bypassed multi-factor authentication. They didn't hack their way in, they just walked through the front door using a key the employee handed them. So now let's talk about the real-world impact. Because they weren't just hitting one company at a time. No, they were targeting the connections between companies, which created this absolutely devastating domino effect.
The scale was just massive. All told, SLSH publicly claimed to have compromised close to 1,000 different organizations. That is a staggering number, and it just goes to show how efficient their whole supply chain attack model was. And we're not talking about small businesses here. We're talking about giants like Salesforce, Atlassian, GitLab, even major cybersecurity firms like CrowdStrike and Malwarebytes. See, by hitting just one trusted app that connected to these platforms, they could potentially get access to hundreds of their customers all at once.
Charlotte Wiley, who's the deputy CISO over at Okta, she really summed it up perfectly. She said that these interconnected software supply chains are now the biggest risk out there. And why? Because its hackers aren't trying to break down the castle walls anymore. They're exploiting the trust that companies have to place in all of these third-party services. It's just way more efficient.
So how in the world do you defend against an attack that targets trust itself? Well, let's pivot from the problem to the solution. Let's look at the response and the new blueprint for how to defend ourselves.
Now, for all the damage SLSH caused, their time in the spotlight was actually pretty short. They launched a big public data leak site to try and extort their victims, but just hours before the first batch of data was supposed to drop, a coordinated takedown by the FBI and French law enforcement seized the whole site. That, plus international efforts that led to arrests, really started to pull the plug on their public operations.
These attacks really shined a massive spotlight on a critical flaw in how we think about security. On the left, you've got what we now see as weak multi-factor authentication. You know, things like SMS codes or those simple push notifications. An attacker can trick you into getting past those. On the right is the solution that agencies like CISA are pushing for, phishing-resistant MFA. We're talking about things like a physical hardware key, something that proves you are physically there and can't be fooled over the phone.
And this all leads to a much bigger strategic shift in cybersecurity called zero trust architecture. The core idea is actually really simple, but it's revolutionary. Never trust, always verify. You completely throw out the old idea of a safe internal network, and instead you challenge every single request for access, every single time, no matter where it's coming from.
The U.S. National Institute of Standards and Technology, or NIST, puts it perfectly. They say zero trust means you grant zero implicit trust just because of where someone is or what device they're using. It's basically the perfect countermove to an attack that is designed to exploit that very trust.
So what does this actually mean in practice? Well, the new defense checklist kind of looks like this. You prevent attacks by training your people and using that strong phishing-resistant MFA. You detect threats by logging and alerting on weird activity, like unusual OAuth grants. You have to be ready to respond instantly with a plan to kill suspicious tokens and freeze accounts. And finally, you harden your systems by applying what's called least privilege, meaning every account gets the absolute bare minimum access it needs to do its job and nothing more.
And these recommendations aren't just good ideas, okay? They are the direct result of a very high-level analysis. After all this went down, CISA got its Cyber Safety Review Board together. This is a mix of top experts from both the government and the private sector to figure out exactly what went wrong and how to fix it for good.
And all of that brings us to the final critical question that this whole saga really leaves us with. It's the big lesson here. You can have the most advanced, state-of-the-art security in the entire world. But in today's connected world, the real question you have to ask is, what about your suppliers? That's the thought that's going to stick around long after SLSH is just a memory.